what your role is. So are you a line manager or are you HR or learning and development? Anything in particular that interests you about this topic. So the meeting chat, we tend to have quite an active meeting chat as I go through webinars. And that's a nice way just to allow you to almost network with other people. Don't feel that you've got to sit there silently. So I'm watching the meeting chat, and I'll kick off and give you guys a chance to say hello, introduce yourselves, and I'll introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. My team, can I just get, oh, there you go, it's coming. I was just checking the chat was working. Well done, Paula and Elise, get things started. Thank you very much. Okay, so introducing myself, my name's Lucinda. So my background is learning and development, spent many years in corporate learning and development. I'm a chartered psychologist. I'm the founder and CEO of Actus, so that's my day job. And I'll mention a little bit about what that is. I also host the HR Uprising podcast, and it's our 250th episode next Monday with a mystery guest. And I'm really excited to have made that milestone. I can't look at it in your podcasts. We've got a great back catalogue. And I'm also really keen in terms of I'm interested in managing change. And my well-being thing is sport, so netball and tennis, and they are good for me in terms of both physical and emotional well-being. So that's me, and I'll just briefly position Actus, and I'll have a quick look at where you're all from, because I can see the chat coming up now as well. So in case you're not familiar with Actus, just to help you understand more about what we do. So we offer a complete performance, learning and talent management system. We also have compliance. It's basically an end-to-end system that's in the performance management arena. Where this might link into well-being is actually, well, engagement. Employee engagement is a real key. As we'll look at the research, it's all connected to well-being. Our relationship with our manager, our sense of belonging in an organisation, all connects really very much with well-being. And if you have a good quality performance management process, and I'm not talking about a tick box once a year approach, if you've got an approach where line managers and individuals have great ongoing conversations, they connect, then that's a really key aspect of building engagement and will link to people's well-being. So that's the sort of thing. Also, people's opportunities to develop all those sort of things is where something like Actus, but most importantly, the behaviours that managers wrap around any system or process that you have, that's how it will link in. So in terms of the outcomes that I'm tending to go through in this, then we're going to look at the recent wellbeing research. I often do wellbeing in January, and I looked back to last January, and the CIPD had done some annual research. Unfortunately, they hadn't done an annual version of 2024, so I've had to go to other routes. So I've gone through recent wellbeing research, see if anything's dramatically changed over the last 12 months. We'll look at wellbeing and resilience strategies, the importance of managing our energy and others. We'll talk about the 4 quadrants of energy renewal and transferable tips. So as I say, this is something that will benefit you, hopefully, and it's also something that you can help to support those that you work with. So let me have a quick look here. We've got, so hi Ian, nice to see you. Marco from Guildford, I think that's a new name. Rachel and Charity linking into wellbeing and managers. Moray, Scotland, that looks, I think so far the furthest north that I can see. Great stuff. So from all over, mainly got a UK, but I know we've got Chinwe, I think usually is abroad. There's probably some people from overseas here as well. So don't be shy, do chat away. And actually on this first question to get us warming up here, you've sort of answered it. I've put this down as a poll, but I've not put a poll actually in the chat for this. Interested to know, if you were to say how important is wellbeing in your organisation, in the eye of the senior leaders within the organisation you're involved in, how important would you say it is? If you were to say very important, if you want to go 1 to 5, 5 being very, very important, 1 being not really important, 3 somewhere there or thereabouts. Give us a number, 1 to 5 in the chat as to how important you think wellbeing is in your organisation. And actually, is there any particular reason why? Is there anything in particular driving it? Or do you think it should be more important? Is it something that people are deprioritising or otherwise? Not sure what the skull and crossbones stands for, Mark. Okay, that's a bit cryptic for me. So really a number of you going, it's a 5. Okay, that's interesting. Structure changes, new people, wellbeing is key focus. Okay. Great. All right, so that explains why many of you are here. So many of you are saying that it's important, very important. I'd say the average is probably about 4. And some of you for students in terms, so if you're in education sector, then the well-being of your students is really, really important. I'm just going to check with my team that we are definitely recording this, because I know something recorded earlier. Just want to check so we've got this going. Can I confirm that we're recording? And just for that, everybody, in terms of this, we will record the podcast and we'll send you a link out to it, the podcast, the webinar, send you a link out to it. Any of the slides we will also provide you with, and we've also got a whole load of extra information there. Thank you, guys. It's a bit confusing. The reason I ask is that so many people now have got AI devices coming in. We were caught out once and the AI jumps in and it says recording when the AI comes in, and we once thought we'd recorded the webinar when we hadn't, because it was one of the, a Fathom, one of these note takers. So we've got it up and running. Brilliant. Okay. So I'll carry on from here. So in terms of this starting out, most of you said that it's important to you, wellbeing in your organisations, and therefore presumably people have seen that it is important within your organisation. So one of you said that it was to do with restructuring, I guess with wellbeing of students is key, all those sort of things. It's important. But is there anything else driving it? Now, when I looked at this last year, there was quite a lot of push in terms of financial wellbeing because the whole cost of living crisis was imminent. Now, that's not gone away, but certainly that's a little bit of the pressure appears to have gone off this. When we're looking at what benefit we get from an organisational point of view in terms of return on investment, it very much seems to link with engagement. So a lot of the impact that we're going to see here is through increased morale, absolutely, well-being behind this absenteeism. And actually, Hannah, that point is really relevant when you look at what's happened over the last 5 years, that absenteeism appears to have increased significantly since 2019, which is interesting when you think that a number of people are home-based, and in theory, there's also been worries that people would work when sick, so they're not being absent. So there's definitely something else going on there. But in terms of return on investment, people feel that wellbeing initiatives, they make people feel more included and more inclusive. And this sense of belonging is very important in organisations. And again, going back to the whole fact that we've got more in many organisations hybrid working, then it can be easy for people to feel disconnected. So wellbeing initiatives, particularly when people are working together on them, whether it's a step competition or whatever it might be, these are things that can actually start to bring a return on investment, but they're indirect. Lower sickness absence. The other thing is, and I'll show you some of the examples later, employer brand or values. There's definitely a school of thought that employers that are seen to place a high value on well-being are more attractive to candidates. So it plays quite a strong part in employer brand, not just in terms of seeing people's values. And what I can see here is Nina saying that you're already doing that. You're doing staff surveys, you listen out. I like that very much. And working on feeling psychologically safe at work. So allowing people to feel that they can say things, be themselves without risk. It's okay to make mistakes because we learn from those. So those are all good elements that all feed into a general sense of well-being, belonging, and undoubtedly links to greater morale, engagement, and which of course in turn will lead to greater performance. And in terms of people's actual ability to perform, but if you've got less stress and sickness, then that's a good thing too. The recommendations are for sure, if you have your own stats or your own survey questions, you don't necessarily have to go outside. The important thing, as with an engagement survey, is having something that's a benchmark for your organisation and doing it regularly enough and asking pretty much the same questions so that you can absolutely compare how you were doing before and where you are. So you want to see it's on a journey and keep a sort of temperature check of how people are doing in terms of well-being. And sometimes people use things like pulse surveys for this. So it's definitely worth keeping an eye on it. It's not like the world's got any easier over the last 5 or 6 years. So this needs to continue to be a focus, and you guys, great, you're doing that. So I mentioned that I'd done a little bit of research in terms of what's current in terms of 2024 findings. And this is one of the points that I was alluding to earlier. 59% of employees say that they would consider taking a job with a company that offers better well-being benefits than their current employer. And by wellbeing benefits, that's not benefits, old school benefits. That might be about, greater work-life balance. It might be about exercise classes. It might be about better relationship with your line manager, or valuing people as individuals, not working ridiculous hours. Those are the sort of things that matter to people more and more, it seems, certainly in this sort of post-COVID environment. And that's reinforced by the point that work-life balance is the top priority for employees. And that came out of one of the LinkedIn surveys. Stress is a big thing. That stress and anxiety and just mental illness seems to be something, again, all really interlinked. And interestingly, obviously Gallup would say this because Gallup are very, very invested in engagement, but it does make sense that if you're highly engaged, as in you feel part of your organization, you feel purpose, you're purposeful in your work, you get opportunities to learn and grow, you're receiving regular feedback, all those typical things which fit with engagement that come out of an engagement survey, and say that that is going to make you less stressed than work location. So people are talking about stress levels, people being stressed by being in work, or having to go into an environment where it might be stressful. But actually, if they're highly engaged, people are better able to deal with stress, according to Gallup. And I think that does make sense, because generally engagement is linked to your relationship with your line manager, hence our link here. So if you're a line manager, are you building a strong relationship with your people? Are you talking to them regularly? Are you aware of how they're feeling? Do they have clear goals and objectives? Do they know what they're doing and what the purpose of it is? That whole clarity, all of those good things that link to engagement and line managers can affect, that can actually directly influence stress. And if you think about it, if you just take the number one question, I know what's expected of me at work, which is the number one question in the Gallup engagement survey, many people get stressed because they are overworked or overwhelmed, and that might mean that they have got just too much to focus on, because they haven't got objectives, they think everything's important, or because they've got too many priorities and the line manager hasn't said, well, actually, I appreciate that we've now changed direction as a business, so let's focus on this instead. So really, those sort of things are not to be underestimated. The importance of a line manager being able to give clarity about what is a priority, and it's not everything, is key. And then at the opposite end of the scale, in that hybrid working, home working is kind of a plus and a minus, workplace loneliness has become a thing as well, because some people work on their own, some people feel a bit disconnected from those in the office. However much that not wanting to have to do the commute, there is also nothing like that feeling of collaborating with real humans face to face. I'm not sure, it'd be interesting actually how many of you, perhaps let us know in the chat, how many of you are fully remote, fully office based, hybrid? Do you see any of this? So I think there's almost a thing where we've got used to being in our home office, like I'm here in my home office, and it's really easy not to, because it's so time efficient, isn't it? You don't have to go anywhere, not to go and network, not to go and collaborate, not to go into it's a big effort to go into London or whatever it might be, or even the local office. But when you actually do, you realise how energizing I think it can be, that whole human interaction. And as we all remember the COVID thing, how if you're on Zoom or Teams all day, that can be actually quite exhausting. Stacey, you're seeing this, do you? That the remote people are feeling a little bit disconnected. And this is the thing, is how do we reconnect? And it's quite easy for even extroverts, I'm an extrovert, to not necessarily get part of it. And that is a long-term problem for organizations, because I mentioned belonging earlier. If people, you're mentioning, a couple of you mentioning here with new employees, Karen's saying that, if you don't make those connections in the first place, you don't necessarily get that sense of belonging, that sense of engagement. Do you have loyalty to that organization? Might you want to go somewhere else? So it is interesting as to how we can make sure people keep that connection. So food for thought there, absolutely. Now, the CIPD I mentioned earlier, the Wellbeing report from 2023, and this is the most recent one that I could find from the CIPD that they've done here. These were the sort of things that they were saying. They said that 53% of businesses had a standalone wellbeing strategy, which I thought was positive, and 69% said it was on the senior leaders' agenda. Now, of course, what that actually means in practice, how do we help those senior leaders to invest or really is it on the agenda, but are we doing the right things to support people? The main thing is more proactive about it. We're thinking about it actively, which is key. Mental health is the most common focus for health and wellbeing initiatives. Maybe that's the right thing. Maybe it isn't. But one of the key areas is lack of line manager skills and confidence to do something with it. So again, thinking with this line management, it's not rocket science, the wellbeing thing. What I say, it's really about making sure that line managers have meaningful ongoing conversations. So it's old school performance management, but not just talking about performance. It's talking about how are you doing. It's those one-to-ones, those check-ins, and ring fencing genuine time where the line manager feels interested in that person. So there needs to be enough priority placed on those human meetings, and then being good quality human meetings, training line managers so that they feel confident to ask open questions, to coach, to support, to give clarity. Those are the sort of things that there's nothing more magical than that really in terms of well-being. Of course, you can have things to signpost. I don't know if you've got things, we used to have something called EAR. There might be people who need external help, which you can signpost as an organisation. But fundamentally, having a good, strong relationship where you can talk to and be listened to by your line manager is really key. What more worrying, I think, is the whole thing about over the last 5 years and 6 years that people are more transactional. So this is the whole thing, is people are less engaged, which kind of gives lower loyalty to businesses. So, and again, if you are really remote and you don't feel a sense of belonging, again, it's really easy to be disengaged. And I took these figures out because they're a couple of years old, but there was a big increase, about 2 days a year. They were saying headed would increase. Sickness absence has moved from something like 5.9 to 7.9, which is a lot, really, if you think about it, in 5-year period. And this is a lot of this is coming over as stress related. So it's something we need to take seriously. But the answers to it are not necessarily rocket science. Quite a lot of it is about common sense. Not to forget how to make sure that people feel that their job quality is of quality. So this transactional thing, people want to feel purpose in what they do. They want to be in the right role. They want to feel meaning in it. And those are the sort of fundamentals that we've been talking about with engagement for the last 10 to 15 years. So again, it's really doing that in a quality way. And then finally, flexible working opportunities and issues. Mentioned to already, you can feel a bit lonely, but people can have better time back. So some people who work remotely, they are brilliant at getting their work-life balance. So they may be able to go down and put some fresh food on, or washing. There's loads of things that maybe makes their quality, maybe they can fit in a workout that they wouldn't have been able to do if they were commuting 90 minutes each way. So that actually can benefit their well-being. But the opposite side of it, they can, we've mentioned already, feel disconnected. Sometimes people don't leave their desks as well, though. People feel a sort of presenteeism, and so they don't necessarily feel they have permission to go and do things that are good for their well-being. So we have to make sure that we treat our people as adults and encourage them, encourage them to utilize, if they're working remotely, to utilize their time effectively so that they're productive. People who go out and walk the dog in the middle of the day are almost certainly going to be more productive in the afternoon than someone that sits wedded to their desk for 9 hours. And we need to make sure people feel permission to do those things to get that level of balance. And we'll talk more about balance later. Anyone here want to say what your own personal practical tips are? What do you do to manage your well-being when you're working from home, if you're working from home? And what about if you're in the office? If you are someone who's office-based, there are loads of people who can't work from home. What do you do there to bolster your well-being? So give us your tips as we go into the practical aspect of this. So getting practical, thinking about this in terms of how do we train managers and employees to manage stress. First of all, we'll talk about a little bit of this today, but acknowledging that we might be feeling stressed is a natural part, and actually a little bit of stress can be a good thing. But it's actually, what are we doing to on an ongoing basis? Any of you listening to sort of podcasts and things about health, a lot of us are not even recognizing that we're under stress, and the cortisol and all those sort of things, it affects your sleep. There's loads of knock-ons to it, and we just become so entrenched with it. So, stress awareness, stress management, we could do some training on that, have some courses on that, have lunch and learns. There's things we can do to acknowledge those things. One of the things about stress is also people feeling out of control. So making sure that people feel that they know what's expected, they can control their environment, they have input into their objectives. Those things are key. Then making sure that you've got a culture of inclusion, diversity is valued and recognised and supported. Psychological safety, as was mentioned earlier, which is great. All of those things about making sure that people have the opportunity to feel part of something, particularly if they are remote. Making sure that the work that people are doing is well designed. It's not, as much as possible, it's not mundane, that they see an interest in it. If they like variety, do they like that? Is your organisation values driven? Do you have values that you literally celebrate, that you model, that you call people out when they're and recognise people against them? Do you do that? So that's a good working environment where you're recognising it, that sense of catching people doing things right, catching people living the values. And then really supporting people in terms of work-life balance. I mean, this was almost a thing that people didn't talk about 20 years ago when I was in the office, but thinking about things in terms of physical health, emotional health, personal growth, alert to financial well-being issues, all of those things are really key to people in terms of work-life balance. So I'm going to go on to resilience and stress management, some of the practicalities, but before I whiz there, let me have a quick look through. So some people need some time out, your time by yourself, fresh air, me out in the fresh air at lunchtime, same here, Emma, if I can do, especially if it's bright today. After this webinar, if it's bright where you are, you should get out and do that. Walking meetings, Lisa, but definitely get out in fresh air. It's really easy not to. And actually, we have some lovely, it's winter, but we do have some really nice days. Use these things. So you use the Headspace app, do you, Louise? And some companies would actually fund that for people, which is quite nice. So at least you're controlling your environment if you're looking at home. So you put do not disturb and then in-person days to try out meetings. So you're managing your time in line with the human piece. Cats to remind you to stop working. Yes, cats can be helpful. And so what's great is you are enlightened here. You know this. We used to talk about this during COVID, but actually, if you're a line manager, do your people know that? If you've brought someone in who's new into an organisation, have you made it clear that that's you modelling that actually we want you to be really fully productive, and that means getting up and down. In an office, you'd get up, you'd have a bit of an informal chat usually here and there, the water cooler type thing, but making sure that people are getting that social interaction or that physical break. So giving people permission to do that. Working from home is about outputs. It's not just about sitting, and being available on Teams all day, every day. Of course, you have to make sure people are delivering outputs, but you want to encourage them to do it well. So in terms of resilience, stress management and well-being, this is really about helping us deal with pressure. And we all, as I mentioned earlier, we've got stress in our lives. If you use things like the Headspace app or meditation, these are really good things. If you can meditate, brilliant. If you're someone that struggles with meditation, there are other things that you can do which are meditative. Though a walk outside in nature could have the same impact. We need to encourage people to be resilient because things are tough. We get disappointments in business all the time. Things are always coming in and out, which aren't necessarily easy. Resilience is key for us to be able to bounce back. And we may find that people just have had sustained pressures, and of course, loads of people have got things going on outside of work, that are also putting pressure on there. So we want to encourage people to just proactively manage their self-care in order to keep resilient levels top and look after our mental and physical health. Because the thing is, someone gets a mental health diagnosis, they're off for a really long time usually. If someone hits burnout, it's a big long recovery. So we want to avoid that at all costs. So one of the things that's useful, and if you are a manager of others, or this is an image you could share with others, it's quite an interesting conversation that you could talk to people on. I'm interested in iPhone. Someone's coming his iPhone with a really interesting statement there. I'll come back to the posterior and anterior chain. You might have to explain what posterior and anterior chain is, iPhone, and if you want to change your name to whatever your name is, that would be brilliant. But thank you for the comment. but people are getting physically injured just for sitting so much. So looking at this pressure performance curve, the idea here is helping people to see this, and this would be a good thing for a line manager to talk to somebody. How are you feeling? Where do you see yourself on here? And at the bottom, if someone's doing a job which is very transactional, very easy, they've been doing it forever, they're bored. Well, that's no good either. You then get into your comfort zone, which is fine. People quite like being in a comfort zone, and maybe they've got lots of time to do other things, but they're not necessarily engaged. So what we really want to be doing is looking at this sort of stretch. So really, ideally, we want to be talking to our people. Oops, I've gone a little bit further than that. Talking to our people and checking, are they just stretching just out of their comfort zone? Now, the problem you can have is too much stretch. People think they are doing fine. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm on top of it. I can handle it. They become overconfident. Maybe they're sitting for 7 or 8 hours a day, as this person's saying there. The problem there, we call it the zone of delusion, where we think we're okay. But the tip, you have tells, and if you know someone well as line manager, you'll know what some of those tells are. They might start making mistakes, or the personality might change, or just they seem a bit sort of quiet or just out of character. And the problem with that is they think it's okay, but at some point this tips over into strain and then can go into overwhelm. And the problem is, if you end up down here, serious health problems, breakdown, burnout, it's quite a long way to get back up again. You've almost got to go full circle. So prevention is better than cure. We don't actually want people to be at either end. What we're aiming to be is just at the top of the purple, maybe just a little bit into the orange. So if I was to pop this poll up, I'm intrigued for you to answer where you would see yourself at the moment in terms of the pressure curve. So let us know where, obviously it's anonymous, so where do you think you are and whether it's where you want to be. The person who's just chatted on the iPhone, paying attention to your posterior and anterior chain, what do you mean by that? Are you talking about how you're sitting, or are you thinking about, I don't know that term, but certainly sitting is sitting there, it's like a new illness, basically. It's really bad for us, too much sitting. Okay, so I've got 74 participation. If anyone else wants to complete the curve, please do so, and I'll pop up and I'll share it. There we go. I'm just going to count down. 3, 2, 1, and share. So this is your classic bell curve, in that you can see that most people are in stretch. So the one thing then, I suppose, that's quite interesting, isn't it? Of you guys on here, almost 50% of you are feeling that you are here. So the question to ask yourself is, are you in risk of the zone of delusion? Are you in the right part of comfort to stretch? And what do you need to do to make sure you don't push into strain? And just being alert to that. And there are quite a chunk of you are in strain and overwhelm. So that's 30% of you are in strain or overwhelm. So well done for being here and acknowledging that. And I'd say take ownership of that. And it doesn't mean you necessarily have to stop what you're doing, but you can think, well, what do I need to do to avoid being in overwhelm? Is it about asking what you can drop? Have you got too many priorities? And I mean, actually, people on here, tips, what do you think? If you've been in overwhelm or strain and you've got out of it back into stretch, what practical things have people on this call done? Do feel free to share ideas. I see. Okay, thank you very much. So it's literally you're back because you're sitting down the whole time. Absolutely. Sorry, I'm going back to the posterior and anterior chain. So pay attention to, so really, the person who's talking about this, if you are seated, you need to get up. You should be getting up at 5 minutes every half hour, right? But if you end up having to deliver training on and on, yes, it's exhausting, but you're potentially getting back problems from that. So, and that's going on to posture, migraines, headaches, and things like that. What do you do there? So things to do, if you think you are in strain or overwhelm, let your manager know, ask for help. Absolutely. You should not be expected to do more work than is physically possible. Sometimes, as I alluded to earlier, it's about not enough priorities or lack of clarity of priorities. So what needs to be done first? And does everything have to be done at once? Or could we stop something? George, good point. Standing desk could be helpful on that sort of scenario, a real physical benefit there. Any other thoughts that people have got in terms of how to get out of strain? Certainly, taking a break from it, making sure you've got other things that you can do that you enjoy, that you look forward to at the end of the day. Being able to say no, ask what the deadline is, absolutely, set boundaries, totally. Yeah, okay, Rachel's saying, acknowledge that your to-do list will never be complete. Yes, there'll always be more work to do. You know, have you ever had that thing where you clear your email, you're going on holiday and you clear your inbox down and you go, oh, there's nothing there. And literally before you turn it off, in pop another 2 or 3. It's never not going to be there. And it's really easy for us to be driven by that urgency. So that's a really good one. 2 to 3 things that have to be completed and then prioritize. Priorities, and step away from work. Totally. Great advice there, everybody. So look after yourselves, those of you who are in that 30%, use this as an opportunity to think, how am I going to recharge and renew? So those things are great from a work point of view, and then outside of work or even during the working day, if you're at home, do some of these things. So these I've called the 4 quadrants of resilience. Many of you will have heard of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I was trained in that. He pretty much used this model. He called it spiritual, but that's not everybody feels that way. So I've kind of gone spiritual mindful as one of those. It works for some, but not for others. But the idea is there's 4 areas within which we can renew, and some of us have more of a preference for one than another. So you've got physical aspects of it. So, you know, the extent to which you exercise, physical exercise, what you eat, the sleep that you get, the quality of the sleep you get, that's going to affect you physically. Emotional, positive relationships, you know, good quality friendships, work relationships, that sense of belonging at work, but also family relationships. Mental, are you learning? Are you reading? So one of the engagement questions is, do I have the opportunities to learn and grow? So feeling that I'm having that opportunity. And then spiritual or mindful, that's where people feel they've got a purpose. So if you're religious, then that works. If you're someone who wants to do something like meditation or yoga, or some of these things kind of cross over. So yoga's potentially, if you're doing deep breathing exercises, you might say that's both physical and spiritual mindful. So there are ways in which you can, you know, tick more than one box. But basically the point here is you really want to try and be renewing in all of these quadrants. So if you want to do that, how can you do it? Well, we've talked about diet, sleep and exercise. Thinking about, you know, the top diet, you know, are you eating really healthy diet in terms of, if you are really busy at work, if you're sitting at your desk for 8 hours a day, are you able to eat quickly? Or are you just snatching something between meals where you're not actually managing to digest it properly? Are you eating whole foods? Or are you eating ultra processed foods? All of those things are going to make a difference. Are you drinking enough water? You know, are you having what's a variety of colours of fruit and vegetables? Are you doing different exercises so you can have balancing exercises? It could be weight exercises. If you are at a desk a lot, like that, you know, stretching out, all of these sort of things. So thinking about varying what we do as much as possible. As our grandparents would say, a little of what you fancy does you good, but are we making it easy for ourselves to do this? And if you know you've got a manic, busy week and you are going to be at your desk a lot, what can you do when you've got the time? So could you batch cook on a Sunday so that you've got really nutritious soups or whatever it is that you can get really easily, so you know that you're nourishing yourself? So when we're stressed, we often don't feel like that. We reach for the chocolate and things like that. So it's when we need to do is to try and be proactive, make positive decisions, and then go to bed early. And we've all been on the negative spiral, haven't we? But can we put ourselves on a positive spiral? So thinking about that in terms of our physical well-being, could you improve any of those areas? You know, that this time of day, when you get off this call about 2 o'clock, we all have that sugar slump, or many of us do. Do we reach for the cake and biscuits, or do we have something that's more sustained in terms of the food? You have nuts and seeds available if you can eat those. So thinking about the things that are good for you. And there's a lot out there now about whole food diets and things that really can sustain you and sustain your energy levels. I was listening to a podcast today about energy, and some of you will have come across the Zoe program. So I did that a couple of years ago, and I think eating more of those sort of things definitely give me more energy through the day. Plus you just feel much more virtuous than if you're eating, you know, crappy stuff. It's, you know, we all do now and then, but certainly thinking you're doing stuff for yourself, it's like a positive credit to yourself, which in itself can make you feel better. So physical well-being, that's one key. Then emotional well-being. So you heard the analogy, radiators and drains. I'm sure you all know what I mean by that. There are people out there who are radiators, and there are people out there who are definite drains. They sort of suck all the joy out of life. Well, we have to work with people of all shapes and forms, but we can choose who we spend more time with. And if you find some people who are just taking more than they give and they are draining you, choose to spend less time with them. Take yourself away with those. Find the people that make you feel great and book the time in for it. Again, often when we're under stress, we're too busy, we don't see those people who we love, who are so much fun, you go and have a belly laugh with. So plan that in, put some time in. Your best mate that you have a crack with, but you haven't seen for months, schedule a call in. Just book those in, have that time with those people, make it happen. Because when we're busy, we don't. And it's such a shame, because actually that's one of the things that can really recharge your batteries, some time with people who make you laugh. Mental well-being, do you feel that you're learning? I'll mention something at the end, because I just learned a new course, and actually I do really like learning something new, as long as it's something I'm interested in. So actually, when was the last time you read a book, or did something? Sometimes things like those brain game things. LinkedIn have started doing great brain games, little things that just get you thinking differently. But what is it that enhances your mental well-being personally? Do you feel that you want to learn, whether it's out of work, you do Duolingo, or if it's something in work that you want to learn a new skill, but are you learning and growing? Because that's key to engagement. And again, it recharges us. Makes us feel better. And then finally, I talked about mindful or spiritual well-being. So that can be linked to nature. It can be linked to whatever religion you follow. It could link to being just spiritual and believing in manifesting and gratitude and just being grateful for where we are. But anything like that, and actually, when you're feeling stressed, it is an interesting one to think, I'm feeling really stressed and things are really rubbish. But actually, you've got to bear in mind, with fires and wars that are going out there, to a certain extent, if we are here and we're safe and in a house, in that freezing cold snap, being grateful for the fact that for lots of people, we've won the lottery, but it's easy not to see things that way. So all of those are areas in which I think it's a good area to think about recharging. And I challenge you to think about where you might want to put some energy in those. And I'll pop that up as a poll towards the end, if you want to think which one it is that you would most likely want to recharge in terms of those 4 quadrants. So just a few summary slides here. And again, these are things that you can take for yourself and for others. So there's no real excuse. Even, it might feel like there's excuses, but it's like this is January. It's the start of January. We can all choose to think how we spend our time, but time will take up what we leave available for it. So we have to schedule it in. So you want to do your exercise and you want to have a laugh with your friends, get it diarised, because then it will happen. Review your diet and sleep habits. Anything else you can do there? It's a great example. There's lots of people doing dry January or veganary, all of those things. But these should be ongoing, to be perfectly honest, not just January, but great time to review them now. Think about your mindset. Are you feeling grateful? Are you looking for what's positive or negative? What else can you do? Focus on what you can control. That's a great way to feel more positive. Set and achieve small goals. So if it's like, actually, I'm just going to do a 5-minute walk, I'm going to stand up 5 minutes every half hour and do some shoulder rolls and some stretches, whatever it is, something that's in your control, make sure you do it. And practice gratitude. There's quite a lot of evidence that people who feel gratitude at the start or end of the day, overall they feel more in control, less stressed, happier generally. So being grateful, most of us have got something of many things to be grateful for. It's quite easy to feel the other way. So practicing being grateful for what we have. Applying this to our people, you could think about expanding this out more widely to work schemes, gym subsidies, setting up something in terms of artificial commuting. So if you are working with people and everyone is got this culture of presenteeism, everyone's got to be at their desk the whole time. Let's do an artificial commute. Let's do a step count. Yeah, okay, we're all at desk, but let's also do steps and make sure we manage steps a day. How do we do that? In terms of mental development, helping people to have opportunities where they are going to learn and grow, putting in place career planning so that they can see that they have a career pathway and they know what learning they need to do to go there. Emotional stuff is about belonging at work. If people are remote, how do we make sure they feel part of things? It's about making sure that everyone has an opportunity to take part in things. Diverse from whatever whether they are neurodiverse or physically diverse, whatever it is, but everyone has an opportunity to belong. Setting up networking. That's not necessarily DE and I networking, that's how it reads, but generally encouraging networking and social events, not always circulating around booze, because that's quite old hat now. I think is other kinds of social events where people can get together, ensuring that there's an employee voice, people feel heard, and that managers feel that they know how important it is to support their people. They need to not be transactional. And then holistic / spiritual, thinking about how can we look more broadly at people. So are we removing stressors that don't need to be there? How are we making sure people don't have ridiculous numbers of priorities? If people have got financial issues or other things like that, have we got other support that we can direct people at? Being aware that there's things outside of work that affect our people. Having psychological safety environment, it's okay to make mistakes where people feel safe. So if you want to be an effective stress manager, and then I've got 7 tips for managers to do, then these are what you do. You know how to relax and you make the time to do it. You eat well, exercise often, you get enough sleep, and it's quality sleep. Don't worry about unimportant stuff, so try to keep things in bags. Don't tend to get really wound up or angry often. In fact, if someone who's getting angry for disproportionate reasons, that would suggest that maybe they are under pressure or stress. Being organising your time helps, because then you get everything done, and managing that time effectively. Using a strong social support system, living in line with your values, and not taking things too seriously. Having a good sense of humour can take us a long way. So those things are really helpful for us as stress managers. And then as line managers, just in terms of how we want to help others, well, be open and share any personal support, struggles or challenges yourself. Actually, work by example. But saying, "Oh, I really struggle with this, but I've started doing this." So being open and talking about things as a human being is really helpful. Using open questions, asking how people are and listening to what they are, and getting them to think, well, what can I do about this? Making sure that people have got clear goals and recognising when they're successful against them. Being a consistent manager, not inconsistent where people they think they're walking on eggshells. Being consistent so they know that you're a safe person to come to. Making sure people understand what they're doing and why it's important. So the organisational goals with individual deliverables. Avoid blame. So this is psychological safety. No, people shouldn't be bad. They try something, they get it wrong. It's okay. Encourage learning from it. And where people are demonstrating good habits, including getting away from their desk in the middle of the day to go for a walk and being open about it. Still getting the work done. I'm not saying they can go for a walk in the middle of the team meeting when you're all supposed to be together, but scheduling time in their day where they get away from it. Encourage that and recognise those positive habits. So you show that you care about them as a whole person. And that in itself is going to help people feel valued, engaged, and also hopefully help them to feel well and talk to you if they're not. So I said I was going to ask you which one of the 4 habits you might go for in terms of which would you like to do more of yourself in terms of the quadrants of renewal. You might want to do a number of them, but you might think, okay, I am one that I'm going to, I do lots of them already, but which one would you like to do more, basically? So put one up. Is that up as a, can you see that? You can. Right, so you've got physical, emotional, mental and spiritual there. Where are you going to do more? That's a challenge to you. This is your own personal commitment to yourself you're going to keep for the rest of January. So where you're voting in here, feel free to put a specific in the chat. Maybe you can inspire some others. If you're going to work really smart, have you got any things that you can do which hits more than one of the quadrants? That's always a good thing. Quite like that. If you're learning a new yoga move, would that work? Well, deep breathing, maybe. So how could you get one that matches as many as possible? Okay, I've got 66 participation. Anyone else want to just choose which quadrant they want to go for? More horse riding, Paula, really specific. Anna, you say exercise more. What does that mean? What would good look like? If you were to do that and I was going to get on this call with you next week and you go, yes, I've done it, what would you have done, Anna? So this is the thing, write yourself really specific. Does that mean 10 minutes every other day, or has it been half an hour? Make sure it's realistic so that you can make and keep it to yourself. So come on, Anna, tell us what exercise more is, because that's not specific. Okay, good for you. Start exercising. I love it. So okay, so 5 minutes, or make it really easy, and so you can celebrate you've done it. And that's one of the things I think why they say that January resolutions go wrong, because people set things that are wildly unachievable. So it's like, if I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk, the start and end of the day, 5 days out of 7, that'd be great. Jenny's got online iPhone photography course. Great, Jenny. Look forward to seeing the results of that. Yeah, focus on what I can control. Stop worrying about things I can't influence. You have to, that's an interesting one. Sometimes we get into the habit of being worriers. So you almost have to work out a way of stopping it, of turning it off, and those sorts of things. Okay, Elise, eat better. What does that mean? You're going to eat less of what, and you're going to eat more of something else. What is it? I'm more vegetable, 5 fruit and vegetables. So be specific. I'm not saying you have to do that in the chat, but make sure when you're writing these, you know what that is. So you've got it. It's a real specific. Yay, I'm absolutely done this. Love it. Okay. I'd love to know who iPhone is. You're still a mystery to me, but I like it. Controlling your diary and reduce back-to-back team. Yeah, back-to-back team meetings. They are painful, aren't they? Okay, great stuff. So keep those chats going. I'm just going to finish off because we've got a few resources in here. My colleague Hannah will drop some links into you. We've got a wellbeing flyer, which has got loads of resources on, because we labeled this line managers. If you want to share some of this with people in your business, we've got things like infographics and stuff. So she'll drop that link into the chat. There you go. So there's resources that you can access. We'll also send them out on the email that goes out to you afterwards. I mentioned the podcast, 250 episodes on Monday, but we've done lots of episodes on things to do with wellbeing. There are examples on the screen here of those. You can see. We'll continue to do webinars monthly. So February is continuous performance management, culture of learning later in February. So we're doing 1 or 2 a month, depending on where the holidays land generally. One thing I just wanted to highlight, in case this is of interest to you, this kind of links to my mental well-being. So last year I decided I wanted to learn something new or take on a new skill. My background was a trainer for a long time, so I've got accredited in something called Type Coach. Type Coach is basically a personality tool, but it's based on the Myers-Briggs theory, but it's taking it from theory into practice, which is what I really like about it. So essentially, most people have done Myers-Briggs, they, oh yes, I've done it. Oh, what are the letters again? Whereas this actually is a tool, which means that I can go, okay, this is my preference, but the tool shows you, if I'm working with Hannah or Laura in my team, that Laura might want really much more specific instructions. She might want me to send her things in advance, whereas Hannah might want to talk something through. So it's what I would call applied personality type. So it's quite interesting. And if you'd like to know more about it, I'm going to do a taster session on Thursday the 23rd next week. So if you want to just, because I'm kind of playing with it, finding it out, and if that's something you might be interested in, I'll basically do a demo and show you in the taster session. You can have a free profile for yourself. And then if it's something you're interested in your organisation, you can potentially take it forwards. So that's next Thursday. If you're interested in that, sign up, or if you can't make that one, get in touch and we'll share more about it. And then just finally, please do follow us on our socials. It's a great way to be in touch with people. We'll send these slides out to you. And thank you so much for joining us today. There's other useful links on these slides, but you don't need to see them now. Grateful for you joining today. Really lovely to start the year with you. Oh, thanks, Emma. Well, yeah, it's really nice to get them used. So I hope the resources are useful. And actually, if any of you go, we could really do with you doing a webinar on X topic or these resources, let us know, because we want to give you stuff that's useful. So yeah, lovely. Thank you so much for joining. Have a successful week, and see you hopefully on the next webinar, or maybe at the Type Coach if that's something you're interested in.